things have been moving pretty fast in New Zealand and around the world. And we're going to talk to Catherine Ryan from Business New Zealand soon. Last year, the catch cry was try to survive to 25 for businesses. Businesses have, I'm not sure it's been the great year for business, for the economy we thought it was going to be. And it most certainly has not been, for this coalition government, for the country, a particularly calm year politically. What is going on? And are we already in what I would call the pre-campaign phase of a government where the coalition's best days might be behind it and everyone is now jockeying for position come next election day? Joining us now is my favourite political commentator and mate, Chris Trotter. Chris, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Sean. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Do you reckon it's kind of, and I'm not saying the wheels are falling off the coalition, but we've just got a few weeks until Winston is no longer the Deputy Prime Minister, till David Seymour takes over. He shot his load on the Treaty Principles Bill, and I get the feeling that battle lines are almost being drawn between New Zealand First and National.
Well, yes, although I do imagine that in National Party circles, the name of Brooke Van Velden is being mentioned in hushed tones because Brooke Van Velden, with her adjustments to the pay equity legislation, has by all accounts saved Nicola Willis billions of dollars, which Nicola Willis was desperately searching for, it must be said.
Can you explain to me how she's done that? I've seen this claim, but it's been on X, and it's been from Labour Party supporters who just abuse the government, even if it's not true. So how does that work, Chris? How has she saved the government billions of dollars?
Okay, well, cast your mind back to the time when the first big pay equity settlement was agreed upon, with Kathleen Bartlett and the care workers.
Yeah.
That cost about $2 billion.
In real terms in 1 year or over many years?
No, over years, but that's what Nicola Willis is looking at most particularly is the long-term prospects for our financial balance as a nation. And there were very big pay equity claims in the works, 33 of them, which have all been stalled now. And there was every chance on the basis of precedent that these would be approved, and then the government would be on the hook for literally billions of dollars.
Because
so,
it's the government that spends that money. They were all public sector jobs.
Because the most of the big ones at the moment, as far as I'm aware, were public sector. So the increase in the wage bill was going to be of that order.
Right. Okay.
So, by wiping all those claims and resetting the clock and also changing the criteria, Brooke Van Velden has done this government an enormous service. I don't know about
Who
the women
is
of New
selling
Zealand.
that story, Chris?
Well, I don't know.
Well, who's saying it? Where did you get all that from?
Well, I hate to say this. Sean, but I got it from RNZ.
Interesting that. So that's the narrative, right?
Well, yeah, but it's pretty hard to argue against because
and
those
RNZ
claims
would have
were
got
there.
it from Chris Rennie or some union economist, right?
Well, no. I think, no, Sean. I mean, there is reality. That's what you and I deal in, isn't it?
Yeah. But I'm sorry, I haven't seen any actual figures on this.
Well, okay. Let's.
And I'm not sure, Chris.
Then.
And I'll give you another point on this, Chris. Do you think the possibility of those pay equity claims would have been factored into any budget or budget forecast before they happened? I guarantee you they wouldn't have.
I have no idea.
No. Which is why I'm going to come at you on this. This is a narrative being painted by a left-wing news organisation, and you said, let's deal in facts. Well, let's deal in facts. Let's see if the potential... No, hang on.
I haven't heard any yet.
Let's see, and I guarantee you they were not, that those liabilities were not in the government's books as liabilities. She hasn't saved Nicola Willis any money because those potential payouts were not part of the budget process. So it's a complete fallacy.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with you.
Well, you can't, Chris, because I'm giving you some facts.
No, you haven't given me any facts, actually.
Well, can you give me the fact as to whether or not the potential cost of those pay equity settlements were in budget forecasts?
I can give you this fact. 33 claims were in the works, many of them near completion. Large amounts of money, judging by the earlier settlements, in the billions of dollars were going to be added to the government's obligations. That has now been taken off the table. I only made the comment that National will be very pleased. I don't know why you're getting so exercised about it. I really don't.
We're having a good, robust discussion. All right, let's move on from that. Let's move on from the political reaction to it. Can I just say, it does look slightly mean to women, and there are quite a lot of them, and they do vote.
They do. They do indeed. And I think National is likely to pay a high price for its actions. As I said, this is a government under enormous pressure in terms of its finances. Treasury is projecting out permanent deficits in the decades ahead, simply because New Zealand is spending more than it's taking in, and it is borrowing to make up the difference. And the interest on that borrowing is growing and growing and growing. And at some point, something is going to give.
Yeah.
And that was why I was very intrigued by Brooke Van Velden's intervention, because this government is in desperate need of some good news in a fiscal context.
Yeah. I do get the feeling from talking to people, Chris, it might be worse than we think.
Well, yes, and it's been really, really interesting watching many commentators slowly turn on this question, and I have to give credit to Matthew Hooton because he began the process of introducing this government and New Zealand generally to Mr. Arithmetic, and others are beginning to follow suit. And it is a huge problem. And there are only three viable alternatives. One is to raise revenue, i.e. raise taxes. The other is to cut expenditure. And the third is to continue borrowing. The borrowing is an alternative which eventually runs out because the people you borrow money from eventually cut you off.
Or won't lend you anymore. Yep.
The cuts in expenditure, that, as Elon Musk discovered, is a lot easier to say than to do because...
hang on, figures just out of the United States, Chris. Government expenditure has dropped by 5% in the last... since Trump took office. 5% down, all government expenditure in the United States.
Well, I'll investigate that.
Okay.
That's a huge
it is.
percentage when
you
give
it's massive.
People the actual amount the United States government spends. I had seen a figure of 180 billion.
Nothing.
Elon Musk's promise was to cut $1 trillion from the federal budget.
He's only been going 100 days. That was in a year, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know what his time frame was.
Okay.
Fairly loose goose as our Elon, but